You comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
You're uncomfortable?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, and welcome back to Ex-Brother Bryce. Today I'm joined with a beautiful stranger, my wife, right there. I talked her into coming on to the show. Not really a show. This is kind of just like a story of how we left. Well, and I'll let Kelsey talk about her story. It's a little bit more interesting. Actually, not more interesting. It's just different than mine. And so I think you guys will benefit from it. So we'll start out kind of earlier in our story. And just to preface, I want these videos to serve. I want to do a series on how someone can leave Mormonism, if that's what they want to do. I'm not trying to get people to leave. I just want to provide help for people like me, for people like my wife that are going through these hard things, and they want to be able to, move on with their lives and figure new things out. And so I want to do a series on, different aspects of leaving and dealing with the emotions. And here we're going to talk a lot about the emotions because it is an emotional journey. And so without further ado, Kelsey, how's it going?
Good.
They already know my story. If you guys want to watch my story, it's titled Why I Left, and it's on my channel somewhere. And we're going to bounce off and go through Kelsey's story while, I guess, I'm there, and I'll add feedback and stuff. But right way back to the beginning, how did we meet?
We met in ballroom.
That's right. That's what I was going to say. Not unless we met somewhere else, or you didn't know.
Well, I think it might have been before that because I became friends with your sister.
That is true. Yes.
So we officially met probably at your house when I came over to play with your sister.
Married my sister's friend. Oh boy.
But we became more acquainted and more friends during ballroom.
That's right.
Ballroom dance class.
I was 13 or so, or 12.
Yeah, 12 or 13.
And you were 10 or 11.
I was 12.
Oh, if I was 13, you were 12.
Yeah,
right.
Really.
She's a year younger than I am. And then what happened?
We crushed on each other for a while. Went into high school and we kind of dated other people, and
we were semi-high school sweethearts. Whenever the people we were dating, we were having a good time, but having drama there, we would always glance over and be like, hey, no drama over here.
See you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were friends. You took me to my first prom, my sophomore year.
That's right.
That was fun. And yeah. So we were we went on dates, but we didn't date in high school. After high school, you left on your mission, and I didn't write you, but you didn't write me either, so it's all good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You went on your mission. I went to BYU, Idaho, and at the time, I was actually writing a missionary. Actually, he was a little younger than me, so he hadn't left on his mission yet.
Yep.
But he soon left, and I continued to write him. Came back a year later because I had my off track. So Rexburg, Idaho does a weird track system, so you don't go to school all year round. So you're kind of almost forced to go home for 5 months during your schooling there. And I ended up finding a job back at home, which ended up being nice because while I was home, you came home from your mission.
Yep.
And I was teaching dance classes at the time, including ballroom. Oh. And needed some help because that's really hard to do by yourself for the first time, especially. And
even though you did it really well, there's like, I don't know, 15 students in there?
Yeah, there were so many kids in the class. Yeah. It was really fun, though. I enjoyed teaching dance, but it was hard. And your mom actually recommended that maybe you would want to help me when you got home.
Yeah.
The couple times I passed her at the dance studio before you got home from your mission. And at this point, I was like, oh yeah, Bryce is coming home. And I started getting kind of excited, not really knowing exactly why. Because it wasn't like we were together or anything.
Because I'm a cool dude. Because it was always the, hey, no drama, man.
Yeah, there was always like a slight crush happening all the time. But Yeah, I don't know.
It worked.
It worked.
Whatever it was.
So you called me. I went to your homecoming and hung out with your family afterwards because they're also really close friends. So, and you called me the day after to ask me if I wanted help to teach ballroom.
I did.
Because your mom mentioned it to you, and I was very grateful for it. So you started teaching ballroom with me, and we became very excited that
Exclusive.
we were very excited that we were teaching ballroom together.
Yeah.
About like 2 weeks later, you asked me on a date and held my hand and kissed me on our first date.
Whoa.
It was a very fun date, though. We had a lot of fun.
That was a good time.
Yep. So this is, I didn't say this is October of 2011. Is that when you came home?
Uh-huh. Yeah, September I came home of 2011.
Yep.
From Argentina. I made a video on that. You can go check it out.
Yep. So in October, we started dating. I guess kind of quickly, just a couple of weeks after you got home.
Mm-hmm.
But we had been friends all along, so it almost felt like...
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, felt natural and...
Mm-hmm. But then, the wrench comes in, and I decide to apply to the church schools, to BYU Provo and BYU Idaho, and I made the decision that I was going to choose BYU Provo, even though I knew she was going to BYU Idaho.
So mean.
Ooh.
So, yeah, those couple months before January, we spent a lot of nights, a lot of late nights together.
Yeah.
Trying to soak up all the time we could with each other.
Yeah. Before who knows what.
Yeah, because it was like this almost unsaid thing.
Yeah, we said we would date other people. Yeah.
Which... I drove to Utah with you, and then a friend picked me up from Provo and took me to Rexburg. And I remember just our car ride, we were like, it's over. Because she was dating a guy from Provo too. And so it seemed to be a trend. There was a lot of people dating.
Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth. There was a ride board, and like a ride website, and you could
pitch in gas
to go back and forth from Rexburg for the weekend.
Yep.
Or vice versa, Provo.
Yep. Which came in handy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm going to Rexburg, and I just like get to my apartment and cry because I'm like, yeah, he's gonna get married. It's over. He's a catch, and he's going to Provo.
And then it turned out that I ended up not dating anyone. I
almost didn't give you a chance.
Was that the plan?
My friend and I were like, oh my gosh, you have a car. Why don't we just plan a trip back to Provo in like 3-ish weeks? You know, we'll give them 3 weeks to find someone else to catch their eye. And if they don't, then we'll come visit.
You little devil.
Yeah. No, it was more of like, we just didn't want it to be over. And still with the understanding that we could date other people or whatever.
There's something to be said about knowing each other, and we know each other for a long time. I don't know. That was something. Everyone in Provo, BYUI, they were getting married quickly, and they didn't know these people before. I thought that was weird.
Especially in Idaho, there's just like this, I don't know, it's a smaller school, and I think because of their track system, people just tend to jump quickly. I didn't.
If you're not on the same track as the person that you're dating,
they could be gone in 3 months.
So you have like 1 semester to get it all wrapped up. And that's awkward. So eventually, we get to the point where, you know, we really like hanging out together. And one of those weekends, I think we were in Provo, by the temple, sitting there on a Sunday dressed up, and I'm sitting in a suit with Kelsey, and all the missionaries are coming by, and they're like looking at me, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh, they think I'm a missionary sitting with a sister. We didn't have name tags or anything. I was like, why the looks, you know?
Oh, and I was wearing like a black skirt, and I had flats on. Like I kind of.
Yeah, I guess you looked the part.
I had a very like one of those raincoat looking things. I looked like a missionary too, and we're like holding hands and walking around the temple, and
we totally were. Yeah, scandalous. Anyways, I say, okay, like, why are we not married? Like, I really like this, you know. And then we kind of just talked for a little while. We're like, yeah.
It wasn't at that point. We were walking around the block around your apartment, down by Seven Peaks. And that's when you asked me, why aren't we married? And I was like, I don't know. Why are we married? I was like, kind of didn't really want to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
When I left for Exburg. So I already felt like I wanted to marry you. Because there was just like that natural chemistry between us.
Yeah.
And it felt comfortable. And we loved each other. So like, why not?
Why not? That's why you should get married. Why not? No, but speaking of like, did you like have like any spiritual confirmation or something like, yeah, I need to marry this guy because XYZ? Well, I mean, obviously you wanted to marry me for reasons, otherwise you wouldn't marry me. But like spiritual, God says to marry this guy.
No, I didn't. And I don't think that I ever really went to the temple, or I think I might have prayed about it, but I don't really feel like I got like this answer.
Yeah.
I loved you and it felt right, so I was ready to move forward with it.
Yeah.
I didn't need a lightning bolt answer to tell me that you were the one.
Yeah. No, that's how I felt too. There was no like, I just like, yeah, we would be fine, and I love this girl, and it's like, don't really need God's approval for this. But, you know, since you're there, you know, I want to marry this girl. So.
It was a righteous desire.
Yeah.
And you were this returned missionary, and you had all the things.
I had all those check marks, check boxes.
Yeah.
Just the next check box. Get sealed in the temple. Yeah, so we pulled the trigger on that thing.
Yep, we got engaged in March. I was still in Idaho. And we decided to get married in July after I graduated from Idaho. Mm-hmm. So we were engaged for 5 months.
5 months. Long distance.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It was absolutely terrible.
And thinking back, I mean, we can kind of introduce some of our thoughts, you know, now thinking about things back then. I mean, obviously, one of the big reasons why these long engagements are so hard for LDS couples is because there's no premarital sex. Sex doesn't happen before marriage, and so you want to share that with this person that you love so much, but you have to wait half a year, you know? It's,
crazy.
mean, yeah, these horny teenagers need to get married, and they have to get married so that it can be okay. Anyways, yeah.
That is not why we got married.
That is not why we got married. It's only half the No, just kidding.
But, you know, we look back and we're like, well, it was a blessing that we stayed away. Yeah. That temptation was far from us.
A blessing. Quote unquote.
It was very hard, though. Planning a wedding. We planned to get married in Arizona, but he was in Provo, or he was in Utah, and I'm in Idaho. So planning a wedding like that was interesting.
Yeah.
But we did it. I graduated from Idaho, which you came to. And then we drove to Provo, dropped off all my stuff to your sister's apartment because we didn't have a place yet. We had a place, but we couldn't move into it yet.
Yeah.
And then we drove to Snowflake, and that was a crazy week. Very insane. I had a bridal shower. I went through the temple. We had pictures and parties, and then we got married, and then we left.
Yep.
And then we went straight back to Utah after our honeymoon.
Our honeymoon in California, Disneyland, the beach,
We went to
beach.
Six Flags too.
Six Flags. The U.S. Open was going on. The surf U.S. Open or whatever.
Yeah. Some surf competition.
Some surf competition. And we were there on a Sunday.
Ooh.
At the beach on a Sunday.
That's why we got burnt.
Yeah, we went there and we're like, oh, well, it's our honeymoon, so we're fine.
This is peaceful.
Yeah, and to give some background, we did grow up in a very orthodox, you could say, town in Snowflake, Arizona. Which we love the town, love the people, but they're very devout people, and yeah, you don't do stuff like that on Sunday. You know, there's many Utah towns that are like this, but this town, it's smaller, but it has a temple. I think there's one stake in Snowflake, one stake in Taylor. There's a lot of stakes surrounding the area, and so I think that's why they put one up there. It's about 3 hours from Phoenix. But yeah, just a lot of devout communities up in that area.
Well, and there's a lot of small neighboring towns. And I think Snowflake is pretty central. So I think that's why they ended up putting that there.
Exactly, yeah.
But it is, like, very small. We have a main street.
It's small. Yeah, we have
and
we have 2 stoplights. Well,
the second one's in Taylor.
Yeah, we have one stoplight and a McDonald's. That's pretty cool. And now we have a Walmart, okay, that's in Taylor though. It's not in Snowflake. But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of surrounding members to support things like that. Yeah. So
well, and there's something about living in a small town that, like, everybody knows you and everybody knows your family, and it's almost like this, you bring honor to your family by being a really good Mormon kid, by doing all the things and going to all the activities, and people recognize that.
Dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow. Yeah, it's that kind of a feel that you're trying to bring honor, even with serving a mission. And I know that LDS communities are familiar with this, but that was what we grew up with, was the very orthodox side of Mormonism.
Yes. Which
gets really interesting going into our story of faith crisis, or truth crisis, which I like to call it.
Yeah.
We got married, came back, and we spent another 7. No. How many years? 6 years? Were we in Provo, Orem?
Yeah, 6 years.
And there, pretty quickly after we were married, I was called into the bishopric as first counselor in a married student ward that we were in.
Yep. We were pregnant with our first.
What was the ward? 27th?
42nd or 41st?
Well, the married student ward, there's less of them. There's like...
Actually, I think it was the 31st ward.
That's it. 31st. Yep.
But then it split while we were in the singles ward into the 41st ward or 42nd.
Oh, okay. That's right. That's right.
Where that name's coming from.
That's right. Yeah. So in the 31st ward, the bishop called me a couple of weeks before he was getting released. And so I was going to be the one to train the new bishop. And I was like, oh, so overwhelmed. And we were newly pregnant? Or we had Bailey already?
I don't remember. We might have had Bailey at this point.
Yeah, we might have. And so, served in that calling. I had a lot of fun in that calling. But of course, I got to go to all the meetings and be in the stuff. And she was home with the kid, or at church with the kid and the baby.
Can I explain more of my feelings behind that?
Yeah, unload.
Looking back, it's very interesting for me to look back and think of that time, because it was very hard for me to, I wasn't very happy about his calling, but I didn't know why. I was like, you just need to be supportive. Like, I'm telling myself all the time, like, what is wrong with you? He's in a bishopric.
And I'm thinking, why can't she support me in this?
And it wasn't like I wasn't telling you that you need to be released or anything.
She did support me.
But I was, like, grouchy, and Sundays became very, like, my least favorite day of the week. And I
was gone pretty much all day.
Yeah. And you left, and I was in charge of getting Bailey ready, and I mean, we only had one kid, but when you have one kid for the first time, there's a lot. Parent
for a whole day.
I couldn't even take a shower before church, because I'm taking care of a toddler, or she was a baby.
And you would go home after 3 hours, and I would be doing meetings or tithing.
We were still newly married. Although we had a baby, we were still newly married. And so it was hard to be like, where'd you go? Yeah. So I look back and I think that it was just, in my heart, was just like not happy about that calling.
Yeah.
Although I was very proud of you for being in a bishopric, I thought it was really, I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was supportive and all those things, but there was like this little feeling inside of me that was just eating everything.
And I had this feeling of, this is awesome. I'm serving the Lord. I'm getting spiritual brownie points for my family. I mean, as I'm thinking about it, like, the higher up you are in the church, just the more big of a head that you get. And you think that you're possibly, better in some way because you were chosen for this calling. I look back on that a little bit, like, cringy, because, I don't know. I was serving, but in my head, I was like, I've been given this opportunity, and other people don't have this opportunity, and so, I don't know. I just think that, I was like, just judgy.
You're righteous enough to hold such a calling.
Yeah, it was like self-validating, but it wasn't helpful for my development. Still being, how old was I? Maybe like 20, 25, 24?
No.
23?
Probably around 23.
I was young. And then, at the end of that calling, I maybe have a calling for, and you got called to where?
So I was pregnant with Bailey when you got the calling, and I had Bailey shortly after you were in it.
That's right.
So, because I remember I was still healing and stuff, and you were still going to church and going to meetings and stuff. Because then you got called into the singles ward bishopric, and I was pregnant with our second. And I'm like, if this is a trend, we're not having any more kids.
Yeah.
I was like, this is terrible. So now I'm wrestling a toddler and an infant during a singles ward sacrament meeting, and it was hard.
Okay. So then I had a second calling. After a period, those callings are 1 year, and you don't receive the office of a high priest like you usually do when you're called to a bishopric. In a married student ward or a young single adult ward, you don't get ordained a high priest, which is nice because you don't have to sit with all the older people. But now it's nice because the old people and the elders meet together anyway. So I guess it wouldn't change now.
Yeah.
But I was happy that I didn't get ordained as a high priest, so that I would have to go through all this.
Because you were still young.
Yeah, I was 23, I was like, no, don't take me. Yeah.
I just have to admit to this, like, you've served in 2 bishoprics at this point, and I was like, I married a prophet.
Are you serious? See, we were thinking the same thing, but we never said anything to each other.
And I always had, like, this odd dream that I was like, I would, not dream, but, like, I wanted to be, like, a primary president on the stand with the prophet,
On the stand with the prophet? So you thought I was a prophet, and I thought I was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I was like, sweet. I'm the first one to go. I never have to live a day without you. All the prophets' wives will die first, so.
Is that what happens? I don't think that's how it happens.
A lot of wives die first in the apostles, you have to admit.
Yeah, those old guys keep rolling, boys.
Anyway.
Chilling with my 120 years. Okay.
I mean, President Nelson's like 92.
He is old, yeah. Touche.
He's on his second wife.
On his second wife. Okay. So, I receive another calling that the bishop who I served with gives me. The stake was asking for potential people to go and serve. And I was released because I served my year. And then I was called to a young single adult ward. And we had Bailey, who was young, toddler, running around. And you were pregnant with another one. Mm-hmm. And we were like, oh, man. Now it's like torture. It's not about being a prophet anymore. And so we got brought in, and we said yes eventually after talking with the stake president. And he's like, you guys can do this. We're like, okay, we can do this.
I mean, like, it was the same feeling, though. A little bit of, like, this annoying feeling, but also trying to be supportive, because I was like, he's going to be a prophet someday, so I better get used to it.
Oh, man. That is crazy. So we said yes, and this is to another year calling, and the second counselor in a bishopric. And it's common for a YSA ward to have a married student couple as the second counselor. And when I was brought in and talked about my responsibilities, literally my main responsibility was just to be there. And I was like, what? What do you mean? They're like, well, I mean, you're a perfect example of a little young family. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. That's a good point. And we literally had a metric over the year of how many people in the ward we could get married. And looking back now, that's kind of like surprising, maybe a little bit cringy. What is the goal of a YSA ward?
To get all the young people together to find a spouse.
Yeah. And so we'd have these linger longer things after the block where the ward paid for a lot of like food for these college students. We had a pretty large budget for food. And so we would have a bunch of food after. Actually, we'd have food like all the time. But we would have food after church, and you would hang out around and you would talk with people. I remember having like a cold cereal bar and like a bunch of like soups and stuff. And sometimes they'd be catered, not on Sundays, but they'd be catered a lot of other times.
A lot of parties. And
yeah.
I mean, I had the same experience in Idaho in the singles wards.
Yeah.
In the single wards that you were in. They're just like very interactive.
Yeah.
I have to say the church does a really good job with that.
Yeah.
They do create a lot of group settings for people to come and hang out and meet friends or make friends or find spouses.
Yeah. Get married, go to the temple so we can get more babies out of you.
No.
No? Maybe.
Oh, maybe.
So we serve in that calling, and eventually we get released from that calling, and
after the second one's born.
Yeah,
we actually blessed our
we blessed our baby in the YSA ward that we were in. The war, it's like dead silent, and we met in the BYU law building, and so. It's in these like makeshift courtrooms where there's like 4 rows and it's like a half circle. And
Bailey loved that.
Yeah, you can hear a pin drop while someone's giving a talk. And Bailey is just like
running up and down the stairs.
Yeah, just like we're like, but
first couple Sundays was really hard. I just like go home and cry and be like, I have a terrible mom.
Yeah. And then I asked the bishop, I was like, well, what do we do about this? He's like, no. The young adults like it, This is what they want. What you have is what they want. And I'm like, Okay. Yeah.
If anything, it had to be really good birth control.
Yeah.
to see us struggle with our kids.
Stay far away.